What's up, Victoria? It's Victoria, and today we're going to do a little bit of versus. Some of it's new versus new, some of it is old versus new, some of it's old versus old. I'm just going to kind of like put it all on my face today. So we're going to split my face down the middle. There's not really like new and old side of my face, it's just like thing versus thing. But I think I have an equivalent for nearly every step of the way. So I'm excited to get into it. Let's do it. But before we get started, if you are not yet subscribed to my channel, baby, why don't you hit the subscribe button down below and hit the like button while you're down there too, babe. Yeah, we're gonna start with face. So there's gonna be it's just so much to do. The first two products I'm putting up against each other are these two products. This is the Huda Easy Blur Primer, and then this is from Yves Saint Laurent. Danny sent this to me in friend mail. This is the YSL New Glow in Balm. This was a little bit confusing, and I played with this a little bit off camera. I don't think it's meant to be used as a highlighter. It felt more like a primer to me. I tried putting it on top of makeup just like during some makeup playtime, and it did not like that. I did not like that. It lifted all of my foundation, so I think this might work better as a primer. Comparatively, I'm not really sure about ingredients, but this left me a little bit beautifully glowy and a little bit perfected. I have a feeling this might do the same, so we're just going to use my hands to put them in. Here they are next to each other. The Huda is purple and kind of like Vaseline looking. And then this is the new, it kind of looks like a cream. As you can see, they're both very viscous and maintaining their shape and not very runny. I would say that the new is a little bit thinner looking, but I'm gonna put Huda on this side. And I did post a short using this Huda primer, and I didn't really notice a difference, but one of my commenters said the immediate appearance wasn't really there, but by the end of the reel they could see some blurring. So I'm gonna let both of these like sit on my skin for a second before we check in. So I guess it's not really relevant of going through my beard. Okay, so Huda's on that side. Yeah, this is much thinner and I would say like slippier, whereas the one from Huda has a bit of a grip. And I would say that this has a gentle scent to it. Speaking of like normal designer house makeup, it's not that fragranced. Like if they told me it was just like the smell of the ingredients, I would believe them. And then the Huda one is unscented. I like that Huda has made that move to more unscented products. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this sit. I was obviously just rubbing my face, so that's why it's red on that side. I don't think it's a reaction to the product. This has had some time to sit. I'm gonna find you. Look at this. I'm fine with that. I started adapalene, so I'm expecting maybe a little bit of purging to come, but I would expect more by now. So if that's where we start and end, I'll be okay with that. But I did get a message from Andromeda and they were like, you might break out more than that, girl. Let these sit for a little bit of time. You can see that the redness cleared up a little bit. I definitely think there's something in the Huda that does even out skin tone a little bit, even though it's purple. It might be that slight purple hue. I feel like this side of my face still is a little bit more red. I would say that the Huda side is more blurred than the new side. This seems like it would be more appropriate for someone who has more dry skin. If you were going to use it as a primer, I'm not really sure what their suggested use case for that is. I feel like it would be also beautiful to mix into foundations and concealer to thin out the coverage to make it a little bit lighter coverage. For me, I think that the Huda side really takes the cake as far as primer goes. I think this is lovely, but this is performing an action that skincare cannot. So if you're looking for this kind of finish, then I would say that the Huda one is probably worth it. If this is your desired look, I would say like you probably wouldn't even need something like this. It might have done some like very slight blurring, but I'm not really sure that I'm seeing a completely big difference. I know that some people don't even use primers. I love primers, but I could, you know, if you don't like primers, I don't think either one of these would be a good selling point to you. I have a couple of pore filling primers I kind of want to put up next to each other. This is from Tony Moly. This is their Egg Pore Primer, and it looks very similar to the Tarte Timeless Putty Primer thing that is very popular, one of those iconic products that people have been using for years. And I'm going to put that up against from Mauve, their blurring balm. It's supposed to do a similar thing. Obviously, whichever one I put on the Huda side has the slight advantage because I do feel like this side is a little more blurred than this side. You know, there is an advantage to that, but we were still going to split down the middle. I think the best place to look will be my forehead to see how these work. They're a little bit different. The blurring balm is a balm, whereas Tony Moly, this was PR by the way, if I didn't say that. I don't know, a silk lotion, like it's like almost imperceptible to pick it up on the finger. I think I'm gonna put the Tony Moly on this side of my face, and I'm gonna put the blurring balm from Mauve on the other side of my face. I'm gonna zoom you into my forehead. I feel like they both did a pretty similar job right here on my face. Like, it looks about evenly blurred. I still think that the one from Tony Moly is blurring a little bit more, but I think that they're about the same. My fear with the Tony Moly, not that I've had this experience with products like this, would be it would be more likely to pill up if you overused it. I think that the Mauve is maybe a little more forgiving in that aspect, but on my forehead, I think you can tell that the one from Tony Moly is a little bit better at blurring. So this is the Tony Moly side, and then this is the one from Mauve. Whenever I put the one from Tony Moly on, there was like a clear marcation where like it started and ended, whereas the blurring balm from Mauve, I feel like it's not as clear that it had done as much work. It would really just come down to what you're looking for. If you're looking for like a more spackly product, I think the one from Tony Moly would be better. If you're looking for something to do like a little bit more slight blurring and something that you might be able to use all over the face, I wouldn't use the Tony Moly all over my face, but I have in the past used the blurring balm from Mauve as a primer and it worked really well for that. This might be a little easier for some people to get on with than this one. Also, if you're already buying from Mauve and you're like buying into the system, I think it's a good companion to have if you're looking for that sort of thing. This is actually kind of fulfilling a request from a subscriber. It kind of was the genesis of this whole video. So as you know, I've been playing with the Sarah Creal Face Flex in the shade 1, and I also have the Westman Atelier concealer, and I have it also in the shade 1, or Atelier L1. I feel like this one, we might go into a little bit more detail about packaging. They're both glass bottles. They're both very luxurious. In the Westman Atelier, you get 0.21 fluid ounces. In the Face Flex, you get 0.3 fluid ounces. I'll put on the screen like price per fluid ounce so you could get a better idea if that's important to you. I'm more worried about performance myself, but these are both very pricey concealers, so I want you to be as informed as you want to be about this kind of thing. This is $58, and I think this was, I don't remember how much this was. I've used both of them quite a few times now at this point. I think what we will find is that the Westman Atelier will have more coverage, but will be a less good color for me, and that the Face Flex will have less coverage, look a little more skin-like, and will also appear to be a similar color to my skin. So we'll start with the Westman Atelier. We'll do this one side at a time, and I'm just gonna grab my concealer brush real quick. One thing that's very notable about the Westman Atelier concealer is that it is like self-setting, and if you don't blend it out fast enough, it does tend to like be harder to blend. I've never really had an issue with it. I have been able to put concealer on both of my under eyes and blend it out with no issue, but like you can tell that's what it's trying to do and what it wants to do. I don't think this would be a good option for a concealer. I know a lot of people will put a little bit of concealer on a spot under their eye and just like let your skin warm it up a bit and it like provides more coverage. I don't know how the science of that works, but I know that people do that. This might not be a good concealer for that. Also, I would say accessibility wise, the one from Sarah Creal will be a lot easier to open. There's a lot of texture, a lot of things to grip onto, and it's a square package, whereas the Westman Atelier is cylindrical and very smooth, and there's not really a lot to hold on to. Also, I just want to say this has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. I saw Westman Atelier applying a lipstick, and she used the inside of the lipstick cap as the mirror. Is that a mirror? Am I paying for that? That's too much. Anyway, just gonna put some under my eye, and we'll just do like one dot and compare. Okay, that was a generous dot, so we'll have to also do a generous dot on the other side. As far as finish goes, we will have to keep in mind that the finish will also be affected by the products we put underneath it. And so I don't think that's a very fair thing to compare, but from just using the two products, this is definitely the more matte option overall, but it is on top of the more glowy base. Now for the Sarah Creal, I'm using the Angie Hot and Flashy A506 BK brush. The brush was received in PR, but I did buy both concealers. You can definitely tell that this is a glowier concealer than the one from Westman Atelier. You can also tell that the self-setting quality is very real in the Westman Atelier concealer. Like you can just see it in the finish, like it's already set. I have to powder the Sarah Creal, and I'm also definitely getting more coverage in the Westman Atelier. And so I think they both look really good under the eyes. I do find that this under eye always has a little bit of a heavier bag situation going on underneath it. So I feel like you can see the sallowness a little bit more on that side. I also think for whatever reason, the lighting is the same on both sides, but this side seems to always catch more light when I'm filming. It's just something I've noticed. It doesn't really quite make sense. Actually, kind of color-wise, one thing that's very impressive about this Face Flex from Sarah Creal is the amount of spread it has. So I definitely did get the Westman Atelier to come down and kind of flick out up here, but when I pull it down here, it like didn't want to come down here, whereas the Sarah Creal, it like blended everywhere quite well. And I think I got more surface area coverage, meaning like not actual coverage from the concealer, but just like more of my face covered with a similar amount of product. I also feel like the Westman Atelier concealer was like designed to be a concealer, whereas I feel like Sarah Creal was designing this product to kind of be like, I don't know, like all of those multi-use complexion products, like the complexion stick from Merit. Like it's like a similar vibe to that kind of thing where it's like, it's a foundation, it's a concealer, well, you use it however you want to use it. And I think that might be why this spreads a little bit more and why the Westman Atelier wants to stay a little more concentrated. But I think under my eyes, they both look very beautiful. And I don't think either one would give anyone problems with their under eye, especially if you feel like your under eyes needing more assistance than maybe some other people's under eyes. I think both are very forgiving formulas based on the texture and the description of them both. That would, I think, decide which one would be right for you. Westman Atelier has way a better shade range than the Sarah Creal. As I said, Sarah Creal said that they were going to expand their shade range later in the year. So I don't know how many shades they will have. Both of these products tend to have a very limited shade range. If I were to pick one for me, I do think I prefer the Sarah Creal, but I still really like the Westman Atelier. It's just like a very specific thing where I feel like this is the kind of product I've been leaning on a little bit more recently. I've been liking something where it's just like, oh, I can just like on my face and kind of go. Whereas I feel like this needs a little more attention as far as what I'm doing with it. Oh, also, I'll swatch it on my hand. I don't find that that's very helpful for me, but I think it will show the consistency of the two products. To me, I like to see what products look like on the skin, even if I'm not getting... This is very interesting. It looks like the Westman Atelier, which is this one right here, is a better match for me than the Sarah Creal. But I feel like once applied to my skin, the Sarah Creal is a little bit better of a match. You can see already in the swatch that the Westman Atelier is starting to set, where the one from Sarah Creal is staying more emollient, but like the thinner parts of the Westman Atelier are drying out. The one from Sarah Creal is like peachier than the one from Westman Atelier. Obviously, I don't know if there would be a better match for the Sarah Creal in the Westman Atelier line. All I know is like, I think that this is the best one from the Sarah Creal line for me. And this is definitely the best one from the Westman Atelier line for me. But it is interesting how peachy it is. I'm wondering if that is also, maybe it's supposed to be a little bit color correcting in its color. Like, I don't know if that's what a thing that it promises, because I don't think it looks too far from my skin tone, but I feel like it looks very, very wrong here. So Hannah, I know was recently talking about this. Hannah, if you're watching, I don't know if you tried the Face Flex. I know they sent it to you in PR. Try it on your face. I know we're not skin twins, but like you might have better luck with it than you think. I think it might flex shades a little bit. Anyway, all that being said, both are great products. It just is a matter of what you're looking for or what the brand has available. Let's talk about some skin tints. So I have the Milk Gel Tint in the shade 1. I also have the Hourglass Tint in the shade 3. Because of how I primed my skin, I'm going to put the gel tint from Milk on this side. I think because of the finish of this, it's going to look better on my skin on top of the Huda, whereas I feel like this will be okay on top of the more glowier things that we have going on this side. I'm very curious to see how this goes and which side I prefer. I know which one I think I prefer. Neither one of these products has really blown me away. Keep in mind, the swatches you're about to see on my hand are thick. So this is the Milk Gel Tint. This is the Hourglass. The Hourglass, you can see, is already starting to run down my hand. This is a gel, so it makes sense for it to be a little bit thicker and less runny, but they're still both pretty viscous. They are both supposed to be tints. I don't know how much I believe it, honestly, in either's case, but I'll put the Hourglass on first. I'm going to use this brush from Mud Makeup. They don't make this brush anymore. I don't normally take my swatches off of my hands to put on my face, but I squirted out too much of both product and I don't want to waste it. I normally work off a mixing palette, but it's definitely easier to show things on my hand because the mixing palette is so reflective. Obviously, they both will have concealers underneath them in the under eye area, just kind of like the Sarah Creal. This looked really peachy on my hand in the thick swatch, but on my skin I feel like it's looking like a better match. I might have a better match in the skin tint line if there are two shades that are lighter than this. I think whenever it comes to skin tints, sometimes it's like the undertone that matters a little bit more. So that is the tint from Hourglass. I'm using a Sigma switch to wipe off the excess so I can use the same brush on both sides. I have not tried this brush with the Milk tint. I'm curious of how it will apply, but even just blending it out on my hand compared to the Hourglass is like melted right into my skin. The Milk one isn't one to do that. That's been my experience. I think even from a distance, before I zoom in and show you, you can tell that the Milk has a lot more coverage than the one from Hourglass. I do think that the Hourglass is more of a skin tint, whereas I do feel that the gel tint from Milk is a foundation. It is selling itself as a tint, but that's foundation. That is a tint. You can still see a lot of my skin through it. This brush wasn't the best to use for the gel tint from Milk. My best applications of the Milk have been with things other than a brush. I just like using a brush, but it was really streaky to apply, but that brush is not very densely packed. I've used other brushes that have not left it streaky on the skin. That was definitely just a brush and application thing, so I'm not really docking it for that. I did not like how much I had to work it into the skin. That's why I find that like pressing this into the skin with my fingers or a sponge tends to work it in better. I think it looks good once it's on the skin. It is a little glowier than my liking, and the base of this is a little matte, so it's usually even glowier than this. And then over here, I do think that this is also still very glowy, but it's definitely kind of become one with the skin. Like, I powder anyway. Well, I don't know. I think I might be lifting it actually a little. I like the finish of this. I like that you can still see my skin through it. It's really allowing the concealer to do more of the work on this side than the actual skin tint itself. This just looks a lot more natural to me than this does. If this had the same coverage as this, there might be something to this, because I do think I see some blurring in there, and I do think that is one of the promises of this, is that it's like the blurring skin tint. This again would come down to preference and how much coverage you're looking for. If you're looking for something more natural but still has some glow to it, I would say the Hourglass would be more your speed. I think this is more my speed. And if you're looking for coverage but something that calls itself a tint, then I would say go for the Milk one. I am curious if people are having issues finding their shade in this product. Like whenever Glossier released their foundation, like I think there is a promise of like flexing when you're thinking of a tint, but I think you have to be the color of the product. These have been blended out on my hand for a while. The Milk tint is mostly on this part of my hand. See how shiny and reflective it still is, where mostly on this area is where the Hourglass is blended out. You can see that it's a little bit glowy, but not like that glycerin finish of this part of my hand. I just prefer the Hourglass, but I don't think they're the same kind of product either. This is one of those things where like, I think if I asked like a straight man who knows nothing about makeup, I'm like, can you tell that I have more makeup on one side of my face than the other right now? I don't think that he would be able to tell me. And like, I see so much. I probably, now that it's like, now, I don't know. It looks so strange to me having different levels of coverage. I'm gonna powder my full face with my Hourglass setting powder, and then we'll come back to talk about finishing powders, because I'm mostly using powders today. Now that I'm powdering, just to interrupt, when I'm powdering, the Milk looks so good when it's freshly powdered. If you give it about a half hour, at least on my skin, my oils start to break through and it just comes just as glowy as it once was. I'm also going to use the Charlotte Tilbury powder under my eyes just to set them, but before I powder, I'm going to zoom you in so you can look at the concealers and see how they're doing in my fold. I do think that because of the self-setting quality of the one from Westman Atelier, I think it looked a little bit better. I think they both were handling it quite well. But I think in an ideal world, my ideal complexion would be the Sarah Creal all over the face, the Westman Atelier right under my eye, finishing powders. They're not going to have the same finish, but we could take a look at them. I'm going to do Morphe versus Chantecialle. This is a repressed Chantecialle powder. All things remain the same. There's different levels of coverage, different finishes happening under both products, but this is to get them on my face right next to each other so you can really see how they're looking in real time. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so you can see the application process. I'm going to put Morphe on this side, and then I'm going to put Chantecialle on this side. Last night, I did a little bit of a comparison from the Morphe to the Charlotte Tilbury brightening powder that I use all the time. And this did not really do super well under my eyes. The Charlotte Tilbury was much better, but I was pressing it into the skin with a sponge to set my under eye. And I just think that that was too much of this. So I do think that this is a finishing powder. It's a finishing powder. Don't buy it with the intention of it not being a finishing powder, because I kind of have been trying to get to the bottom of like what the brand is trying to sell it as. But it's a finishing powder. So I'm going to put these the same place that I was putting the blurring primers underneath. So the front of my cheek and the side of my forehead. Did I say the side of my forehead? That's not what I meant. The front of my forehead. And I'm going to do Chantecialle to the Hourglass side of my face. I'm zooming you in just to show you. There is just something really matte about this Morphe powder, which I don't think is bad, but I think for me, at least, things just maybe a little more powdery than I like. I think it's still a gorgeous powder. So like I'm saying some like critical things about it, but when you look at the Chantecialle side, I think it did an equal amount of blurring. Again, there's more product underneath this side. There's more coverage on this side. So there might be an illusion that this side looks like better just because there's more coverage on this side of my face. But I do think that the Chantecialle did a better job blurring as well. But this could just really come down to preference. I think they're both beautiful. And if I didn't already have the Chantecialle and love the Chantecialle and I bought the Morphe powder, I would be super happy with it. I just think it's a little more mattifying. I have found in my uses of this that I can easily go overboard and make my skin look very dry, and I have oily skin. That's a bit of a feat for it to have accomplished. But yeah, I've been using the Chantecialle for years. There are definitely times where I think I have gone overboard. It just is much harder. Morphe's such a brand, I think, dedicated to making products for younger people. That's just what they're doing. So something like a heavier powder like that, I think could work better on younger skin. Obviously, Chantecialle is a brand that is very expensive and designed for a very specific customer. And I think you can definitely tell based on the way that it sits on my skin that the formula is like much more elegant than the one from Morphe. Neither are bad, both are good. If you want to try a finishing powder, I still think the Morphe is very good. But I have been wondering whether or not I was going to keep the Morphe powder. And I think the Morphe powder might have a better home in someone else's hands now that I've compared them directly next to each other. Because this side of my face, this wasn't on purpose, is looking more like what I would like my skin to look like versus this side of my face. I think I'm due for a reckoning of some things in my drawer. I've already been kind of going through it and picking out some things that I think their time has come to pass. One of those products was this from Trixie. This is their Cold Shoulder Blush. I have a lot of blushes this color, and I was going to compare it to my beloved Chanel blush that was limited edition a couple of falls ago. So the reason I really wanted to compare these was just because I wanted to see how close they were. One, if you were always interested in that Chanel one, the Trixie one might be a good option for you. But then two, also, do I need to keep the Trixie one? Is what I'm gonna get down to. So I'm gonna put the Chanel on my what is currently my preferred side of my face. Oh, still so pretty. I think a big bonus to the Chanel, which of course it's so hard, you'd have to buy it secondhand now, because it's a couple years old. The one thing about the Chanel is that I really don't have to think too much about applying it. It really does apply. The Trixie blush is a lot more pigmented and I had to think about it a little bit more. But look at that. Oh, still so pretty. So I'm going to pick up a lot less of the Trixie blush. This was definitely designed for someone with deeper complexion in mind. I don't believe that the Chanel one was. There is a silver sheen in this that is not in the Chanel. The Chanel is more of like a soft matte. You can definitely tell there's more punch to the pigment in this one. They're both very pretty. I think the silver sheen actually makes the one from Trixie look a little more bruisey. The color is very, very similar. And I would almost argue that maybe Cold Shoulder is a little more special because it has a little bit of that silver sheen. I'm going to build up the Chanel side a little bit more to kind of meet the Trixie where it's at. Again, keep in mind, the things underneath it are different coverages and finishes, and that is going to affect the result of the product. But there's Trixie. There's Chanel. The Trixie blush is this one right here, and then this is the Chanel blush. This definitely is less pigmented. It makes it a little bit easier to apply. I don't have to be as considerate. However, if you have a deeper complexion than the Cold Shoulder shade, that's not called Cold Shoulder. It's called Cult Classic. I've been calling it Cold Shoulder the whole time. Cold Shoulder is the highlighter that I also bought from Trixie. But I think they're definitely sisters. I mean, oh, I don't know. I really like the Trixie one. But I also like the Chanel one. But I do think they're very similar. Ooh. Anyway, I don't have to make a decision on which one I want to keep if I want to get rid of either. A girl can never have too many brown blushes, can they? Can she? Can they? I'm blending out the Trixie one on my hand. It definitely is bruisier even whenever I try to meet the same level of pigmentation. I think a little more purple in it than the Chanel does. I think they're definitely very close. Like, I don't think one would need both. If you have the Chanel and you have fairer skin, I would say you probably could skip on Cult Classic. If you have any skin deeper than me, then I think Cult Classic would have been the better option for you from the beginning. And it also has that beautiful silver sheen that runs through it that the Chanel does not have. They're both beautiful. I could look at brown blushes all day and I can see the nuances in them, but I know on camera and I know in real life I can see it, that they are so similar that, like, again, if I ask a person who doesn't know much about makeup on the street, if I was like, do you think I'm wearing two different colors of blush? I'm not sure that they would be able to figure it out. I also think if you looked real quick at me, you wouldn't be able to tell that I'm wearing two different blushes. I think the real makeup girls would get up in your face and be like, I can tell. I'm gonna take leftover finishing powder and just kind of like press both of those into the skin to kind of dim them a little bit because we're gonna be talking about bronzer next. There's a clear difference in these bronzers, for sure. I'm considering whether or not I want to keep this from Surratt. This is the shade Grisaille. They sell it as a contour shade, but I find that it works as a very beautiful natural bronzer on me. I'm going to compare it to the Gucci bronzer in the lightest shade. They're not going to be very close. Definitely in formula too. So that's the Gucci. It's a rosy bronzer, but it looks absolutely orange compared to Grisaille, which is supposed to be a contour, but again, I find that it wears really beautifully as a bronzer. I only have this bronzer and the one from Trixie kicking around in my permanent collection right now. I think that this could be useful, especially in the winter when I want to wear bronzer. I think it would work really well for that. I'm gonna put Grisaille on this side, and the reason I'm putting it on this side is that everything on this side is a little bit softer and more delicate, and I think it will appear more on this side. I mean, I think they're both really good for my skin tone. I would say that the Gucci formula is potentially more blurring than the one from Surratt. I just feel like again, the finish and the stuff of what's underneath could also be coming into play. But even when I was applying it, I was like, oh, that's blurring. It's blurring more. It's a blurring powder. Not that the Surratt isn't looking good on top of my skin. I think it looks very skin-like, but it didn't add any enhancements like I think the blurring of the Gucci. Honestly, once they're on my face, can you really tell how different they are? They definitely look more different thickly swatched than I feel like they look on my skin. Maybe it's a little bit warmer. Also, I meant to start with that, not the blush, but the way I have everything set out in front of me just to make sure that I get to everything. Let's start with eyes. These are newer to me, the Urban Decay eyeshadow sticks, and then I also have my Victoria Beckham eyeshadow sticks. I pulled out the shades that I think were the most comparable to my Victoria Beckham shadow sticks. We're going to just compare them in formula. I'll swatch them next to each other so you can see. This is Trench from Victoria Beckham. This is Blurred Out from Urban Decay. This is definitely much closer to my skin tone and definitely much cooler toned than Trench. This is Pecan from Victoria Beckham, and that is Senescent from Urban Decay. And I would say that those are more comparable, obviously. Like those are pretty close in shade. Actually pretty much almost identical. So I will do Victoria Beckham on this side. I will do the Urban Decay on that side. And I'm going to be using BK Beauty brushes to blend. I guess I could zoom you in. This is Blurred Out from Urban Decay. This is Trench from Victoria Beckham. Obviously the Victoria Beckham shade is a lot more yellow. And then this is definitely closer to my skin tone than this one. I would say that because this has a little bit of depth to it, it kind of makes it a little more multi-dimensional without having to put on other shadows. Like that little bit of darker color sitting in my crease almost makes it look like I have a second shadow on, and I don't. Also, when I put on the Victoria Beckham, it blended further out, whereas the one from Urban Decay stayed a little more concentrated and I had to add more to spread out to the outer portion of my lid. They both were fine to work with, but my theory about these being a little bit drier and wanting to set down a little bit faster, I think is true. So I feel like you have plenty of time to casually blend out the Victoria Beckham ones, and then when they're set, they're set. I do think that the Urban Decay ones have a tendency to want to set. The Urban Decay was definitely harder to blend out on top of the other Urban Decay, but I think it did eventually blend out. It just like took a little more work than the Victoria Beckham side. I also think because it set faster, it kept more of its depth than the one from Victoria Beckham. In my personal preference, I think the Victoria Beckham are more my speed. I don't think these Urban Decay ones are unworkable, and I do plan on keeping a couple of the ones from Urban Decay because I really like some of the colors that they have to offer. But I do think as far as mattes go, I would much rather work with the ones from Victoria Beckham. But I think, you know, they both did a sufficient job. This one just required more work. I'm at a place in my life where I don't want to spend more time blending on my eyeshadow, even if it is a couple seconds more. I would rather go with the Victoria Beckham. I could always add more of the Victoria Beckham if I wanted to. But what I will say is that every eyeshadow stick I have ever encountered has fallen out, and those Urban Decay ones, while they're still very fresh, none of them have once popped out of their container, but the Victoria Beckham ones do. Makeup is so down to preference. I still really like these. If you were asking me personally, Tom, which ones would you rather work with, it's these ones. When it came to like a shimmer shadow, I couldn't think of like shimmer shadows that I wanted to make a direct comparison to. Another Urban Decay stick with this from Ritual Defy, which I've never used on camera, but I think that this could be a little more relevant. I am currently testing out the Just a Taste palette from Unearthly. There is a shade in here that one of you said that you were quite interested in it. It's called Haunted Heart, which is this right here. And I thought it would look pretty similar to Solstice from Urban Decay, so I thought we could, oh my god, I have a whole Urban Decay eye. I could put it on this side. And I could put the one from the Unearthly Just a Taste palette on the other eye. I don't think that they're gonna be exact dupes, but I think they're kind of similar ideas. I guess we'll find out together, won't we? I guess I'll just use my finger. Oh, I'll swatch them next to each other. I mean, I guess this will just be how it plays out on the eye. Solstice is a little bit darker. It's this one right here, and then that's from the Just a Taste palette. Let me put them on my eyes, and then we can really get into it. So I'm going to put the Just a Taste palette on this side. Very pretty. The shade from Unearthly is a lot brighter, and I also would say it's a lot shinier and sparklier, whereas Solstice is a lot more subtle. But I think they both have quite a bit of sparkle in them. This sparkle is just darker, and I think there's like this light blue sparkle in here that's really catching the light and making it dance quite well. I think it is, I'll zoom you out, because of course I will, because I've been zooming you in and I'm zooming you out. I'm having trouble bonding with this palette, but every time I do use this palette, that is the shade that I want to put on my eyes. I don't know if Unearthly sells singles, but I would buy that as a single from them if they offered some of their popular shades in their palettes as singles. Anyway, this isn't really a review of this palette, but I'm just letting you know. I would also say like this looks a little more wet. I don't know, once I'm zoomed out, they look less different. They're still different. They're still different. They're not as close as like any of the other matches, I feel. But that's okay. Let's, you know, we're swatching them next to each other. I still think, like, if you were interested in a color like this, Solstice might be able to scratch that itch. There's also probably shades from, like, Cleona and Bella Beauté Bar that might also scratch that same itch. I really like that. I should have just zoomed in the whole time. Also, I didn't really put foundation on my nose, and I know that. Should we do a finger test? Interesting. So the lighter shades didn't really budge at all. And I had swatched Cinnocent the other day and it didn't budge at all once it set, but for some reason it smeared this time. Now we're to mascara, and I do have two mascaras open right now. They're both tubing mascaras. I have the tubing mascara from soshe. I need to look that up. And I also have the relevee mascara from Surratt. We'll put soshe on this side, although that's probably a mistake. I've been noticing me in this soshe wand, I always end up getting mascara on my eyelid, where I'm not really doing that with the one from Surratt. I also do want to report that I did work out with this tubing mascara on, and it did irritate my eyes. And I'm like fairly certain it was just the mascara. And I don't normally have that with tubing mascaras and working out. Usually they hold up quite well. I mean, not that it got smeared all over my face, but like it definitely like agitated my eyes. This is a terrible application of this. It's looking terrible. It looks so bad. Hey, that's like the first time it's looked like that. It looks bad. Look how bad. That looks terrible. The soshe mascara I got last week. I've used it a couple of times. Enough to know that that was weird. Like, that didn't look right. Oh, I don't know. And of course I got it on my eyelids. Oh, it's a mess. Oh. It's like it heard me talking bad about it not working out when I was working out. Ugh. Also, I have found this mascara so hard to scrape off. Okay, sorry. I don't know what's going on there. And I'm going to put the Surratt Relevee mascara. And I purchased the Surratt Relevee mascara. Oh, I also got this on my lid. Great. This mascara is pretty wet, the soshe one. The one from Surratt is a pretty dry mascara formula. I do tend to prefer a more dry mascara. So the Surratt is the smaller one. I think that this wand is just too big for the kind of formula it is. And the Surratt I was able to flick off so easily, and this one I wasn't. And I was comparing the two yesterday just to kind of look at them. They looked a lot more similar on the lashes yesterday, but I think this one looks a mess. I think the soshe one looks a mess. And then when I was working out, the Surratt side wasn't bothering my eyes at all, and I was getting like watery irritation on this side. Well, the side of my face that had the soshe on it yesterday. I don't know how many of you actually keep up with like new makeup releases if you're not watching a new makeup release video, but Mauve released these sparkly lip glosses, and the one looks like it might be dead on ringer for the Isabella lip lock. So I bought that shade and another shade to see how close they might be, and then also to tell you my preferences in their formulas. For lip liners today, I'm going to do Mauve versus Endless Cacao from Makeup Forever. This is the Mauve M159 lip liner, and they're very similar. I've swatched them next to each other so many times, and I might even have put them on my lips at the same time before. So there they are. Endless Cacao's this one, and then this is the one from Mauve. I'll put Makeup Forever, and I will actually fill in my whole lip, because why not? Honestly, they're pretty much the same color. I'll zoom you in. Makeup Forever, Mauve. They're so slightly different. I still think that this is just a little more brown, and this is just a little more gray. They're basically the same. They're like basically exactly the same. If you ever run out of M159 and you need something in a pinch and you can't wait for Mauve to ship to you, you probably go to Sephora and get an endless cacao pencil. And if you are trying to be like exclusively cruelty free, then you might want to switch to Mauve if you've been looking for a dupe for endless cacao. But I would say they're basically the same. So I think I've done this split before, the Mauve versus the MAC Folio, and that's how I learned that they were different, but I'm going to do them again. I'm going to keep Mauve with Mauve. Sorry, this is M102. I think I said M159 again. I bought another Mauve lipstick whenever I made the order for the lip glosses. I don't know, now they look so close again. Folio shade from MAC. I feel like it's a little bit of a shapeshifter. It's definitely like a little bit lighter, even right next to it. But like you can tell, like, sometimes I feel like it looks like a concealer lip on me. And other times it's like just a grayish. And it looks very similar to M102. I don't think they're dupes because there are some times where I feel like this looks like a concealer lippy on me. But like in a very real way, I don't think they're so different. So I have the Huda Easy Bake versus the Ultra Matte Urban Decay All Nighter. So we're going to spray both sides of the face. We'll do Huda on this side. We'll do Makeup Forever. Again, as I said with everything, the finishes of what's underneath are really going to come into play here. And, you know, levels of coverage. But we'll see how similar they are. Or we'll see if the Huda one's doing anything new and exciting, actually. And we'll also see if the Ultra Matte is Ultra Matte compared to a product that isn't really even talking about mattification. Oh, I'm almost out of this. That's okay. I think I'm gonna buy a mini of this to take on a trip I have at the end of June. I need to go get my real ID. One thing I will say right now is the Urban Decay is scented, or has a smell, whereas the Huda one might have a smell, but it definitely is not a detectable scent. The one from Urban Decay it smells. It's like I don't know how to fan with my left hand. The Urban Decay Ultra Matte definitely is giving me a more matte finish. And I also kind of feel like a more powdery finish. Almost as it, well, no, because it's not really happening up here. And potentially is like more blurring than what happened with the one from Huda. But I would say that they did about the same. I think that the Huda definitely leaves you with a much more skin-like finish. Here's where the Urban Decay was. Here's the Huda one. Interesting. I still think they're quite similar. I do think that the Ultra Matte leaves you a little more matte. So the Huda would be my preference in that one. And I hope I made some comparisons that might be helpful for you, and I answered any questions that you might have had in the verses. Maybe I found some alternatives for you to be able to buy in the future, or like, you know, in the case of the Trixie blush versus the Chanel blush, if you missed out on this, you might want this. Now that this has been on my face a little bit longer, this does appear to be a little more pinky than the one from Trixie. Obviously it's lighter, but I don't know. Does you see what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, it's been on my face for a little bit and I just feel like it's like a little more pink than it was. Anyway, that's gonna end the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you didn't subscribe already, what are you doing? Go ahead and do that. I'm on Patreon and I have channel memberships. You can find those linked down below. I do one additional video for patrons and members every single month. Doesn't matter what level you join at, everyone gets the same video. It's kind of like, if you want to join and support me that way, you're going to get that reward. But there's always no pressure to join my Patreon or channel memberships. I'm just very happy that you are here. I also have a pinned comment. In that pinned comment are links to help people who need your help. If you have the means to support those people, please do so. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the video for me. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to follow your hoe and you'll find me. And I'll see you in a video very soon. Go forth. Tits out.